All right, guys. I'm not sure if we ever talked about max height. I know we talked about max width, and max height is essentially the same, but for height. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to demonstrate that and also a different property called overflow. So my text right here is pretty big, and it makes the page scroll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this all within a container called it's going to be a div, and it's going to be called my text. I'm going to close that right there, and I'm going to indent all this, and I'm going to fix the indentation on that. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to set the max height of that. So it was a class called my-text, and I'm going to set the max height equal to 200 pixels. I'm going to save it and refresh. And now if I open section and my text, you'll see by the blue area how big that is, but the text is overflowing outside of it. So, rather, the content of it is overflowing. It doesn't have to be text in order for the overflow property to affect it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set overflow here first, just to show you guys what it does, to hidden. I'm going to save it. There we go. Now it makes all of the text or all of the overflowing content just hidden. Now, alternatively, and I'm going to put a border around this so that we can see it better. So border is going to be 2 pixels, solid, black. Save it and refresh. There we go. So this is our container for our text. And we can also make it scroll if it's too, if it's too long for the content area. So just by setting the hidden value, just changing that to scroll. Save this and refresh. And now we've got a nice little scroll box that we can scroll in, but we also have an unusable horizontal scroll box. And so I'm going to say overflow, I think it's X, to hidden. Save it and refresh. And now you'll see that the y-axis is scrollable, but the x-axis is not. And that's mainly because the content within it is only ever going to be as wide as the parent container anyway. So it wouldn't even make sense to, in this instance anyway, to have a horizontal scrolling content inside of this. So that's what overflow does, and that's what max height does. So I can set this max height to say 100%. Save it and refresh. And now this becomes high enough rather to contain stuff within it. Let's set the text, or rather, hold on. The max height is going to have to be less than the height. So let's set height equal to 600 pixels, and then max height equal to 200 pixels. Save it and refresh. And that's another demonstration, I guess, of how you would use this. If there's ever going to be an instance where you don't want the height to be bigger than something, but it might be, you know, and this is going to really come into effect when we start really talking about responsive design, but that's when you're going to use max height and max width. Now, we also talked about percentages, but there's also a different type of height and width that you can specify, and that is max width equal to, say, 100 view width, or VW. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the header left 0 pixels, save this and refresh just to make sure that worked. Okay. So now you'll see there's no scroll bars. So I'm going to set the width of this to 100 view width. That means 100% of the view width, not 100% of the content area or the page itself. So what happens here is this works and it looks the same. Now there's a key difference between percent and viewport sizes. And I'm going to change the overflow from scroll to show. Save it and refresh. Did I save that? Refresh. Sorry. Just initial. There. Refresh now. Okay. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. So what we're going to do is you'll see that this now, the page has a scroll bar, or the viewport has a scroll bar. And the view width is the same. The view width would be all the way to over here because it doesn't account for the scroll bar's width. So if we set the main header to 100%, it does take that into account, and we won't get this bar on the bottom where it scrolls. I'll refresh now, because it only makes it as far as right here. But 100% of the viewport, or the view width, would be way to over here, so you'd get that scroll bar on the bottom. So this is going to be good if you want to use heights that can't really be determined by percent. For instance, if I set the main header to a height of 100% and save it, where it's fixed position, let's change that. Let's remove that altogether. Save it, refresh. There we go. 100% of the height is 100%. Of its height. It's kind of a redundant statement. But if I set it to 100 view height, save it, refresh, it becomes 100% of the height of the viewport. And so that's the main difference, as you can see there, between percentages and then viewport width and height.